that out of this discussion, it's not a blame game, yet it is an intended discussion so that it can shape you over there, your thinking, and looking at your country, how to improve the current well-being of our country in terms of trade and in terms of also business. And once again, Honorable OGUZU, you're welcome into this debate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think, Joseph, you make some pertinent points that production is very, very critical for turning around the economy.
Exactly.
And usually when you want to create jobs, the industrial sector, the manufacturing sector needs to be supported. But again, all these go to how we have prioritized and intervened from a policy perspective in the past. I did talk of the catalytic role of government in all this. We all agree that there has been some relative stability in the country, which should have propelled us, to the league of those nations that have really been able to progress. But why is our story different? And I think my colleague BANYENZAKYI has made some observations. The infrastructure. I think there are areas where we got our priorities wrong. How much of our national resources have we been allocated into the agricultural sector, which is the backbone of our economy? So when we begin to audit things like that, we will find they are critical sectors of the economy we've paid lip service to. So despite the stability, you will find they have not significantly contributed to lifting many people out of poverty. How have we performed in the issues of mindset change? How are we making Ugandans believe in themselves, believe in their country? Are we all working for the country, or we are moving in an uncoordinated manner? You see, those countries that have been able to shape their future, at least there's some feeling of nationhood, that this is the only place we must transform and build for ourselves. And that goes back to what has been the political environment. Is it all geared towards transforming this country? I think that is something we need to deliberate on. We've been able to execute some policies. For example, the privatization of a number of key sectors of the economy. You saw recently one of our professors, Professor, I think, Shuruma, argued against the outright privatization of key sectors of the banks, the commercial banks, which should have been capitalized to make capital very cheap. When we privatize the Uganda Commercial Bank and some other key productive, industries, before actually Uganda, we should have built on some of those to improve our productivity. But when we decided to sell everything at even no value, so there was nothing to start with. So in some of those countries, you will find that they have maintained certain key things that the government has to regulate. So largely, why we are where we are is because of the policies we have pursued. We are where we are because of our interventions and the leaks. Corruption has been discussed over and again. There are people who believe corruption is good for the country. There are those who think
so it has hindered the production.
It hinders our progress.
Yes.
And I tend to agree with those because corruption tends to oil a few individuals who may not necessarily be productive in the economy to be able to create jobs. to be able to do things that have, you know, replicate effect on the economy. So for us to deal with these issues, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. What has worked elsewhere and can work for us, because these are not things cast in stone. For a country to thrive, I'm sure there are things that must be done. And I think countries like Singapore, countries like Korea, with whom we're in the same level of development, have been able to turn their things around, must be benchmarked. We need to look at what is it that they did differently that moved them forward, and what is it we are not doing. Based on such findings, then we can be able to align, and of course that must take into consideration our peculiar challenges, our opportunities, our resource envelope. But I really think the country has potential, the country has committed people, the country has industrious people. They only need catalytic environment that they can leverage on. Let's look at something like power. We have regions like West Nile that for all this time they have lived in blackout. Many do not have a feeling of what power is like. So even if you are very industrious, even if you are very, you know, there will be a limit to what you can do. So it's only in a few years' time that we will be now connected to the national grid. So you can see such a structural failure which has hindered progress in parts of the country. We have areas that are mineral rich, but the people cannot benefit from it.
Minerals.
For example, Karamoja is mineral rich, but that has not been, you know, tapped to
and here,
benefit.
for purpose of the viewers, we have a report from the National Development Plan, and that was of the then 2012-2013, as it is reported. Just connecting to what we've said. Our country GDP is being contributed to by a percentage of 0.3 from potential minerals, and yet 16 potential minerals were identified by 2015. Natural resources would have bridged this gap, and it means, dear viewers, it remains a debt to us, and especially policymakers, realizing the potential of Uganda for trade and business, and these are some of the pillars that we should be able to look at. Thank you so much, and maybe if you want to add on something, and then we'll go to Honorable BANYENZAKYI.
Yeah, I think how we deploy our infrastructure must be rationalized.
Yes, sir.
And our ability to mobilize domestic resources must be strengthened. There's a lot of illicit financial flow going on in the country. The country loses a lot of. So if you look at some of the tax waivers we have given, sometimes you cannot quantify the benefits. So a lot of things really need to be rationalized if we are to mobilize enough resources to redefine many things that have not worked for the country.
Yes, sir.
But most importantly, the politics of this country must be agreed on collectively.
Thank you so much. That was a great contribution, and our people from MARACHA County, they are very happy for such contribution, and especially I hear you of a point of the infrastructure, the power grid. It is everywhere. Even Honorable BANYENZAKYI agree with us. Yes, when we are talking about the power grid, we have had the challenge where we have just wires are passing by many families and they have not yet accessed. And I think it is a critical issue that we should be able to interest the government to look at how best can we use. And remember, the government has taken a lot of loans, and huge, of course, incurring huge debt, which should be equal to, you talked about rationalizing it to what should be the benefit.
Yeah, because much of our expenditure has been a consumptive expenditure.
In Parliament.
Not geared, not necessarily in Parliament.
Finance 500.
Actually, if you do an audit.
capping.
That could actually be part, but if you do an audit, you will find there's a lot of waste. Yeah, maybe districts.
Let him finish, then you'll come in.
A lot of consumptive expenditure.
Thank you.
A lot of administrative costs.
Yes.
So you find key sectors of the economy
Are not being financed.
They are not financed.
Okay, please.
That's
Thank
where
you.
we go wrong. So
Thank you.
largely it is the policy, the intervention,
The policy, the
catalytic
interventions,
role.
and the catalytic.
Catalytic role of the government.
That's a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah. So please, you're also welcome, Honor, once again.
Yes, in the interest of time, let me go straight to the point.
Yes, please.
Because you see, we was bringing up the Asian tigers. What did they do right and we did, and we're not doing right. Of course, good governance is a key to this kind of economic development and growth. What the Asian tiger did, like Singapore and the others, was first of all to have zero tolerance to corruption. But here is our corruption, zero tolerance in Uganda and in Africa at large. So zero tolerance, good governance was key. When you are talking of zero tolerance, that brings me even to the issue of the illicit trade, the shadow economy, the minerals you are talking about. These are illicit flows in billions of dollars, which are not captured and are not taxed. You see gold is going, you see precious minerals are being exported. We are not tapping them. They are all going under the shadow economy. So of course, one of the other solutions for to solve this trade crisis is to have the intra-trade within the African region, within the region, East African community, Africa at large.
Yes.
Uganda is a small economy and a small population. You are talking about a 45 million population. Africa is 1.2 billion population. We should be manufacturing or producing for 1.2 billion, and that's what we should have, the right policies, the right trade policies that will feed and tap into the 1.2 billion population. By adding values to what we produce, we should be taking our own coffee. But here we take Nescafe. We export our beans and import their Nescafe, which is chaff. If we were having like coffee consumption in this country, in Africa, in the region, we would not even be crying for these other markets, which are inhibit us. The issue of finance, to have the right finance to churn the growth of these industries is very key. Because if you are going to have money at the interest rate of 30%, that money cannot make an industry grow, because it will even inhibit the local growth. Because if you are going to compete with the China, who is an Indian, who has come up with finance from their country at 1%, 2% per annum, to compete with our locals here, then we can't develop our local capacity. This is where I call that UDC, the government. The government should strategically intervene in these areas of growth, industrial sector growth, so that we build the capacity of the nation to add value on what we produce. We do our own coffee, we export finished tea. We Ugandans start exporting cloth, not cotton, start exporting finished coffee, instant coffee, not coffee beans, chocolate, not cocoa beans. You know, this is what we need to do, and individuals cannot do that. So the country, the nation, the state needs to intervene through like Uganda Development Bank. But if we do not invest into these areas, then what we are doing would be inadequate. When you look at non-tariff barriers that I've been talking about, you are having borders crossed. You are having a border like between Uganda and Rwanda closed for 2 years. That is the economy closed between Uganda and Rwanda. You are having this kind of wars that you are having in Congo. That is a catastrophe for the trade crisis here. So as we are talking about industrialization, we are talking about standardization. When you want to say you want to export finished goods to Europe, are your goods standard? Do they compete? Are you going to but if you're having these things that are not standardized, you both should step in to make sure that goods are standardized to compete into those areas. And when we talk about even another issue, implementation,
yes,
these government ministries, departments and agencies should build synergies to make sure that the implementation of whatever we are doing. If they say we are going to do industrial growth, we are going to have Namambe as industrial area. We are going to build 22 industrial areas. We are going to have industrial regions. There must be synergies of government departments to make sure that these things happen.
Yes.
So all these, they work together. They work good governance, political stability, a good regulatory regime. They all work together for our economy to expand.
Thank you so much. Only because of time, we are going to come back to you. We'll have 2 minutes, and we'll be concluding 1 to 2 minutes. There is something pertinent that would like our viewers to understand. When a country was declared the economy open, there were a number of challenges, including promised economic stimulus packages. Our schools were completely, especially those which were private-owned primary and secondary schools, were at a peak of totally declining. Others were sold out. We also had the challenge, as we are concluding, that's in 1 or 2 words. Most of our business entrepreneurs, the small scale and the micro scale, were heavily indebted, and yet the government, of which we continue to call upon, it would have been the sole responsibility of the government to come up with measures of empowering our people and those who are in the production chain. While we are concluding our program, what could be our conclusive remark and opinion that could bridge this gap that we are still facing? Thank you. We can please, once again, Honorable OGUZU, you can take us through that as we conclude, just in 1 or 2 words.
Yeah, Joseph, I think just to learn some lessons from our colleagues on the continent. We had a program by the Ghana government called One District, One Factory. Using that, they were able to improve productivity, production across the country, and that created jobs. For improving agricultural productivity, they came up with what they call one village, one dam. The plan was that in every village there must be a dam sunk so that people can...
Which country is that?
Ghana.
Ghana.
People can be able to do production even in dry season. And that somehow improved the agricultural productivity of the Ghanaians. And right now their story is different if you dare to go and find out. Bailouts have been promised, and I doubt if these have really trickled down to the ordinary person who should ideally have been targeted. And this is where I agree with my colleague BANYENZAKYI that governance is a critical component.
Governance is the critical component.
Every transformation,
every
progress
countries make.
So it is important that the most affected sectors of the economy are supported.
They're supported.
And we've been able to borrow a lot of money. Uganda has borrowed probably more than any of these governments in the region. But when you get down to how much this money has done by way of improving productivity, by way of putting many people back to, to their jobs, so that in future then they can get to support the economy, you will find little. I think this COVID, many say, has been amplified in our country for other motives, not necessarily because the pandemic was so lethal.
Thank you for
because countries that did not do the kind of lockdowns we did with so much devastating effects are still moving at the same pace in which we are moving. So in summary, I would just say we need to converge on many things. Ideally, the country should do what I would call a conference on how we should move forward.
So there should be a dialogue on how we should move forward.
We
Yes.
need to dialogue and hear from.
Don't we know where we are supposed to be going?
Thank you, Honorable.
Because
Your point is
these
taken.
are all top-down
Yes.
approaches to development. We need to hear from the ordinary person how they think they want to move.
Not only in the conference halls and the
Not
boardrooms.
things designed.
Your point is very well made. Thank you so much, Honorable. I agree with you.
That's why
we need to go.
bring those
Thank you.
issues
Honorable, please. You have 1 minute
Sometimes we are no
to.
longer represented.
Yes, you have
One
1 minute
minute.
to make a conclusion.
the kind of package that the government provided. First of all, it was providing to the SMEs that had gone to the bottom low in the pit. And when they come, those packages that they came for the SMEs, they came again when they are prohibitive. The conditions attached through the banks. So they are prohibitive. The only kind of bank that would bring in talk about is Uganda Development Bank. But how many people does it reach to? It's only in Kampala.
Exactly.
Only in Kampala. And you think that the only bank, development bank, with only one branch in Kampala,
Thank
how
you.
will it reach to the people?
Yes, please.
And of course, the issue of these non-tariff barriers, these crossing borders, this business of saying that don't export our
To Kenya, to
don't bring
Tanzania,
our sugar,
to
don't bring
Rwanda.
our cement, don't
Yes.
bring our what.
Yes.
And definitely, the issue of the government, as a government, we should put the money where our mouth is.
The money.
Because when we talk about productive sector, let's invest in productive sector. But here you have said you are coming with parish development model. And out of you find that 60% of the money that has been invested into parish development model is being wasted in workshops. You are having ministers and prime ministers and who making workshops even in the roads, not going to the people.
Honorable, we believe that's a great contribution. That has been a great
Of course, when that money is unleashed to the people, the people produce.
So we go
When
for
they
production.
They produce for the market.
To the
When they
dear
produce
viewers.
for the market.
Yes.
They will have to be infrastructure. You build roads.
Yes.
You put schools. You for skills.
Storage
you put,
infrastructure.
You put health for their health. You build silos
Thank you.
for the aggregation of those products. So the consumptive sector impacts a lot on the productivity of this country.
Honorable, we appreciate you so much. Those who don't know Honorable BANYENZAKYI, he is the director of Operation Wealth Creation, a former minister, state minister in the office of president for economic monitoring. What he's saying is rightly said, and if you take it, it will help us to move our country to come out of this crisis. Thank you so much. Until we meet again, our guests, please, when we invite you again, we will welcome you to come and speak to people.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
I think you are seated at the right place. Operation.
No,
Smart 24, driving business.